The Board of Peace is supposed to oversee the enforcement of the Gaza ceasefire and reconstruction, and it will be in charge of the bodies responsible for implementation. Opinions have diverged on the board and its mission after invites were extended in January. France, Spain, Norway, and others cited concerns about the board's charter, which suggests it would extend its reach beyond Gaza. They fear it's an attempt to replace the United Nations. Germany and Italy opted out for constitutional reasons, namely that U.S. President Donald Trump would be chairman for life and have the final say on all matters. The U.K. put off membership after objections to Russia's invitation. Moscow and Beijing received invites but have yet to respond. Trump rescinded Canada's invitation after the Prime Minister objected to his plan to annex Greenland. The UN and Palestine were not invited. Arab and Muslim countries that accepted the invites did so on the condition that the board sticks to its mandate of stopping Israel's genocide and rebuilding Gaza. But Israel was invited, even though it's being charged with genocide in Gaza, and the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for its prime minister. Membership of the board is only 3 years, unless countries pay $1 billion. So far, no state has pledged that amount.
Well, for more on the board and today's meeting, we're going to go to Antony Loewenstein, who's joining us from Sydney. He's an independent journalist and author of The Palestine Laboratory, a book on the Israeli arms and surveillance industry. Antony, thanks for joining us. The Board of Peace meeting, $5 billion as a pledge. OK, it's billions of dollars away from what is likely needed, but surely it's better than nothing.
I would question that. I mean, the first point that needs to be said over and over and over again is that there are no Palestinians on the so-called Board of Peace. Now, if you're trying to supposedly repair, rebuild, recuperate Gaza with no Palestinians, you have to ask about the real agenda here. And the agenda really has been pretty clear from the beginning, both from Donald Trump, from Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner and many others, including some in the Arab world. I would argue it's not particularly to rebuild Gaza for Palestinians, but rebuild Gaza for others. In other words, for investment and what I call disaster capitalism. Companies, corporations, individuals who are looking to make a fortune from the development of Gaza. I mean, it's worth saying, and of course Al Jazeera does report this, but it's worth saying to people that there's no ceasefire. There's an official ceasefire or unofficial ceasefire, call it whatever you want, from October, but people are being killed every single day. Israel still controls about 58 to 60% of Gaza. There is no real indication of that occupation ending. The other part of Gaza, or the majority parts of Gaza, I've been seeing the last 24 hours, incredibly disturbing images of photos and videos of medical clinics in Gaza City, which are really squalor. I mean, it's complete squalor. Of course, the weather is still very cold in Gaza. So, sure, having some money on the table is not irrelevant, but the question is, what is that money for and who is it trying to appease? And I fear this is not about helping Palestinians at all.
So where do you think the money is going to go then?
Well, if history is any guide, having looked at these issues in other countries, often that money goes to contractors in, for example, the US, Europe, or the Arab world. I've done lots of work on disaster capitalism in Afghanistan and Haiti and elsewhere in the last 2 decades, and regularly what happens is locals occasionally get some scraps here and there, but generally it goes to contractors, to outside forces. And the vision that Jared Kushner showed recently in Davos, these kind of high-rise buildings and shiny apartments, etc. It's not really clear who they're going to be for, who can actually afford that, beyond a vision which essentially tries to build on the bones of Palestinians. I mean, just in the last 24 hours, the respected Lancet outlet publication in the UK put out a report that found that the death toll in Gaza is almost certainly way more than the roughly 75,000 of the official figure. So ultimately, without some kind of accounting of that, some accountability, what are we exactly building on here? We're building on bones. That's basically what is happening here, a proposal to build on bones, and that's not even clear who it's actually for.
Antony, can I ask you then, because I think it's probably clear why a number of countries have refused to take part, even if they haven't been explicit in that refusal. But is it not better that they do try to take part in this, if there is no other alternative being offered, that they do have a seat at the table and they do have a say at that table as to what happens in Gaza?
It's a fair question, and in many ways there is no viable alternative right now. There are certainly alternatives that have been proposed by many in Palestine, in Gaza, even some in Israel, of the more right-minded, progressive, not far right. But the reality is the UN has been sidelined. I think it's clear that the Board of Peace is attempting to replace the UN in both Gaza and elsewhere. The problem is that the agenda, how do you have a legitimate process when there are literally no Palestinians? And also note in the last 24 hours that the so-called vision of the Trump administration, which was leaked to a UK newspaper, is that the so-called ISIS-affiliated gangs that Israel has been funding in Gaza, which has been the case for a long time, long before the ceasefire, and it continues to this day, are the potential police force in this new rebranded Gaza. Now, again, whose agenda is that serving? And sure, it's a legitimate question to ask. It's better to have a seat at the table, but the table has to be having 4 legs. And I fear that the reality is it's basically 3 legs, if not 2. And the real agenda is not to help Palestinians. So I can see the logic of many nations potentially joining, but I don't think it's about helping Palestinians. I think it's about wanting to be close to Washington and Israel.
Antony, thank you as always for your insight and your time. Antony Loewenstein joining us from Sydney.
Don't miss out. Get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.